Good afternoon. Excuse me. Good afternoon. This is Dr. Holt, and I'm reaching out today just to let you know that I've been traveling back out in Colorado, in Denver, at Metropolitan State University, under our division, the Western Educational Equity Assistance Center, known as WEAC, as we travel throughout the nation, supporting and training school districts and schools in regards to different issues that they may have. I so happen to be the trauma expert, certified traumatologist, trauma practitioner, trauma specialist. Yeah, you name it, right? So, and one of the big things right now is trauma is a big issue. We're seeing more children being exposed to high levels of trauma at very, very early ages. And it appears that the ages are getting younger and younger, what we're seeing with kids as they come to school with a lot of trauma. And the reason why I'm doing a lot of travel and getting a lot of requests from different superintendents and different leaders of school districts come in and train their staff about trauma is because trauma is something that is a big systemic issue in our schools. We're seeing children with high levels of trauma coming to school. And because of the fact that they are in some traumatic experiences and are experiencing traumatic stress, it is affecting the kid. It is affecting the brain of kids. When trauma is entered into children's lives, it impacts the brain, and as a result, if it impacts the brain, it impacts the individual. It impacts their behaviors. It impacts their cognitive capacities to learn in the classroom. That's one area. Another reason why we need to look at trauma is because of the fact that it has changed the game of education. Let me tell you, I don't care if it's regular schools, public schools, charter schools, private schools, alternative schools. Trauma have shifted the game in regards to education. I mean, trauma is so prevalent and so systemic and so problematic is that even teachers now are changing their professions. We are seeing new teachers coming to the game of teaching fresh out of college, and within 3 to 5 years, they are already suffering from compassion fatigue, burnout, and just tapped out because there's something else called what we would call in the trauma field secondary trauma. Okay, and so we also now have to be looking at how do we support educators in regards to trauma. But my thing is, I think trauma needs to be looked at into three components: one, traumatized kids; two, traumatized teachers; and three, traumatized families. Yes, because we're seeing that regardless of how great our interventions are, if we don't do better on shifting our homes and helping and supporting parents that have been exposed to a lot of trauma, then sometimes it just exacerbates the problem when it comes to kids. In case you did not know, 70% of Americans today have been exposed to early childhood trauma. So it's something that we really need to get into. And so on tomorrow, I'll be going to driving 2 hours from Denver up to a school district in Cheyenne, Wyoming. And so I've been called to come in and to do some trauma training. So you've probably seen pictures and a lot of photos in regards to me doing trauma training, not just trauma in Arizona, but also trauma nationally. So I can be all over our regional states on the west coast, supporting school districts on trauma. And so trauma is real. And so when we look at trauma, it gets really horrifying in some areas because trauma can be from poverty, it can be from violence, trauma can be from abuse, neglect, maltreatment from their own caregiver. I mean, you name it. And so kids are coming to school with two backpacks. The first one is the physical backpacks that they carry on their backs that has their classwork, that has their homework, but then also kids are are carrying what a lot of people don't see, a lot of educators and professionals don't see, is the emotional backpacks, right? And those backpacks are covered or carried, or those backpacks, they're carrying abuse, maltreatment, hunger. Man, some kids are only eating from the cafeteria food from school. That is the only meal some kids get. And some of us are trying to figure out, why is a child not learning in class if the only food you're getting is from the school and you're not sure where your next meal is going to come from? This is serious business. I was in Denver a few weeks ago, dealing with one of the Denver public schools, and one young lady, when she said that the school was saying she's not learning, she's getting into fights, she's very aggressive and things like that. And I sat down and worked with this young lady. This young lady told me since she was 14 that she was struggling with homelessness. Her mother can never keep a job, can never keep a home, and there were times she had to sleep in a car and then go to school. Are you kidding me? That's trauma. Okay? And when we look at trauma, trauma is how we defined it. To make it in layman's term, we can get really deep with it: developmental trauma, psychological trauma, and all those things. But pretty much, it's a stress that supersedes your ability to cope with. And so when these high levels of stress come where you can't cope with it and it's life altering, yeah, it shifts from regular stress into traumatic stress. Not to get too deep into it, but I just wanted to know that I'm excited about going to Cheyenne. I'm going to be doing my first level of training. One is called trauma informed care. That's where a lot of our states now, a lot of our school districts trying to become trauma informed. But my second one that I designed is called trauma responsive practices. And at some point, if we're really going to shift the culture and climate in our classrooms in regards to kids struggling with trauma, we're going to have to move from trauma informed into being trauma responsive. And I know you're saying, well, what is the trauma responsive? It's now, after I'm informed and I've been educated about the realities of what kids go through in regards to traumatic stress, or the neuroscience piece about what is going on when kids are in the fight or flight, and what's going on with the hippocampus and the amygdala and all those things that's going on in the brain of children. Then we need to get responsive, okay? And so that's part 2 of the training, and that's where a lot of schools are not getting yet, because they're just trying to catch up to be informed and understand trauma. But at some point, we're going to have to get to the place where we're being way, way more responsive. And the responsive piece is actually shifting the culture and climate, actually supporting kids, supporting teachers to maintain classroom management for kids to learn, and to create healthy spaces for children. And that starts out by teachers building relationship with children. What we're seeing in science is that to help brain development, babies and children, when they feel that they're in loving spaces and healthy spaces and having healthy relationships and attachment to teachers or caregivers or whoever is the adult in the room, then it just increases brain development. Children just perform highly much better. So, with all that being said, I'll be coming back to you. Let's just keep it locked with me. And we'll be talking more about trauma and the things, and also talk about the different types of trauma and the different things that our children are going through, and some of our adults are going through. But again, so I'm excited about Cheyenne tomorrow. We'll be going over to Cheyenne, doing some trauma training, and I'm going to just be updating where we are on the different places that we're going, okay? So I'm a big believer that in order to teach kids, you're first going to have to be able to reach kids. If you can't reach kids, my God, you certainly can't teach these kids. Relationships. So keep it locked. We'll be going out Cheyenne tomorrow early in the morning, all day, 8-hour training and teaching. But it's going to be good. It's going to be exciting. And we need more of this, more trauma, especially with kids of color. When we start talking about poor children, African American children, and Latino children, and Native American children, we most definitely have to dig deeper about supporting our kids that are having a tough time in their personal spaces which explain why they're having a hard time in their academic spaces. And until we deal more with creating more frameworks of social emotional learning for kids and addressing how they feel, we will never be able to get on top of how they will learn. So again, this is Dr. Holt. I'll be looking forward to talking more about trauma from my profession, my expertise, and from my own personal experience. So we look forward to talking to you soon. So again, keep it locked. I'll be connecting with you on tomorrow. All right, this is Dr. Holt. Take care.